We are standing here in defense of the United Nations Charter and international human rights law against Pakistan's sustained and persistent violation of humanitarian norms. We're here in Washington, D.C. today, so our immediate appeal is to the US President and Congress. To echo the contributions of other speakers, we are urging the implementation of the Leahy Law, a law that prohibits the US government and military from providing military assistance to armed forces that abuse human rights. As we've heard, the US supplies F-16 fighter jets and Cobra attack helicopters that have been used to bomb and strafe civilian populations in Balochistan. Quite clearly, the United States is aiding and abetting war crimes and crimes against humanity. That is a shameful thing for the world's greatest military superpower, which claims to be a democracy and a defender of human rights. There's also, as we've heard, overwhelming evidence that the Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence Agency and military are guilty of some of the most gross human rights atrocities in Balochistan, which are clearly in violation, in contravention of the principles of the Leahy Law. So all we're simply asking is for the US to honor its own legislation, to implement that legislation in accordance with its own agreed principles, to make the Leahy Law applicable to Pakistan. We're also urging a US congressional fact-finding mission to Balochistan to investigate and secure independent evidence of the terror tactics being used by Pakistan against the Baloch civilian population. We want to ensure that the US Congress lives up to the principles of human rights that it espouses by going to Pakistan, by insisting to Islamabad that it must have access to investigate for itself what is happening on the ground in Balochistan. The US must insist. It must insist that Islamabad allows access to Balochistan, not only for its own fact-finding mission, but for human rights defenders, journalists, and aid agencies, all of which are currently blocked by Pakistan. We further urge that human rights organizations in the US assist the Baloch people to bring legal proceedings against Pakistani officials who are responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Balochistan. Specifically, to take action under the US Alien Tort Statute, which allows for the prosecution in the US of human rights abusers worldwide. Key targets for these proceedings under the Alien Tort Statute must include the former military dictator General Pervez Musharraf and the former head of the Southern Command Corps, Lieutenant General Nazir Janga. It's also time for an exploration of the opportunities and possibilities of legal proceedings via the International Criminal Court, the Convention Against Torture, and the Geneva and Genocide Conventions. These international statutes exist and have existed for decades. They can and should be applied against the Pakistan state and military. And we need legal experts and human rights defenders here in the United States to step up to the mark to enable and empower Baloch activists and victims of human rights abuses to take those legal proceedings in